It's been a while. 3 weeks is the last time that I have done the match preview video. And the last time I did this was week number 12. And here we are. We are now in week number 15. The World Cup break is already over. It was actually over last week. And the reason why I didn't do a video last week is because I was down in LA and I couldn't do the preview and review video. But I am back, and this is probably consider the rivalry week of MLS because we have 3 big derbies that is going to be happening this week. We got the Cascadia derby, we got the Cali Clasico, and you could probably say the Atlanta versus Orlando City is also a derby, although it isn't really consider the fact that Atlanta has won pretty much every single Atlanta versus Orlando City kind of match. So yeah, that is what I call the one-side derby. I mean, some people will say that's the Southeastern derby. I call that the one-side derby because it is just so one-sided. But either way, let's talk about some of the other games. We're going to start first with the Friday game. And the only Friday game of today is Minnesota versus Dallas. And oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that there are 11 games this week. There's going to be 1 on Friday, 7 on Saturday, or 8 on Saturday actually, and 2 on Sunday, which is pretty normal nowadays in MLS. But we start with the Friday game, and we start with Minnesota versus Dallas. Minnesota, of course, lost 3-2 to the Rapids. They, of course, was part of the team that finally gave the Rapids their first win in like 10 games. While Dallas lost to the Red Bulls 3-0. And, you know, Minnesota has been really struggling lately. Like, they have gone... I think they only have like won 1 out of their last 5 or something like that. But they have been going through a very tough stretch. And all this talk about how potentially they could be sneak into the playoffs and how earlier part of this season they've been looking okay, but not like very good. And at times they were hovering above the red line, but now since this bad stretch that they are in, they're now in 10th place in the West, or actually 9th place in the West. And it doesn't help the fact that they are playing a Dallas team that should be very upset after that last match. I mean, I still could not believe how does Dallas were up a man against the Red Bulls and you still lose 3-0. And you were up a man when the Red Bulls were up 1-0. So I don't know how in the world do you concede 2 more goals after that. That is something that you usually never see in soccer, which is a team go down 10 men and they still can score goals. It is very rare that has happened. So I expect Dallas should be very angry about that, and they should get a win against Minnesota, although Minnesota at times has been very good at home, so it's definitely not going to be an easy task for Dallas, but again, they should be able to get this win. But yeah, next up, it's the Cascadia Derby. So the Sounders and Portland, this game is going to be at 1:30. It's going to be on Fox. And this game, I'm not sure if I can if I'm going to watch this game, because I'm actually going to be going to a view party on Saturday. I'm actually going to go down to Avaya Stadium to watch the World Cup view party there. And I'm also going to be doing a vlog of that. But the Cascadia Derby, hopefully I can maybe catch the latter part of the first half and then catch the entire part of the second half when I get back home. And certainly this match is going to be heavily favorite for the Portland Timbers because they just got a huge result against Atlanta. At Atlanta, they got a 1-1 draw against them. And now they're playing against the Sounders team that is basically what they are this season, which is they are bad. And, you know, I expect Portland should be able to get a win in this game, although, you know, this is the Cascadia Derby, and I'm pretty sure the Sounders, despite how bad they are this season, they're going to do anything and everything to try to frustrate this Timbers team. And I'm pretty sure they're going to maybe do exactly what they did in the last Cascadia derby, which is kind of like, I wouldn't say park the bus, but go very defensive and not even commit man forward, because that's what the Sounders was in the last Cascadia derby when they lost 1-0. They were trying to nurse a 0-0 draw in Portland, and it turns out it did not work. So yeah, this should be a very interesting one. Certainly, like I said, Portland has the advantage in this game, and although the Timbers do still miss, I think they still miss Guzman, who is coming back from World Cup after the team that he's representing, which is Panama or Costa Rica. I think it's Costa Rica. I don't think he's Panamanian, but since his country is knocked out of the World Cup, he should be back in the next match. But yeah, next up, it's the one-side derby, as I call it, or some people would say it the Southeastern derby. It's Atlanta versus Orlando City, and just like the Cascadia derby, this is a matchup between one of the team that is having a pretty good season, and the other is having the opposite. And in this case, for Orlando City, they don't even have a coach right now. They don't even have a manager that is leading to them, because guess what? Jason Kreis is officially sacked from Orlando City. And I'm not sure if I have mentioned this before, but yeah, he is sacked from Orlando City. He was sacked about a couple of days after that loss against the Montreal Impact on the road. Not the home game, that is, even though they play Montreal again at home. And guess what happened in that game? They lost that one too. I mean, oh my goodness, Orlando, how exactly bad are you right now? Like, seriously. Okay, if you lose to if you lose to Montreal once, I mean, that's already bad enough. But to lose them twice, and to lose them at home and just get embarrassed at home like that, yeah, it's no wonder why it was a great idea for them to finally sack Jason Kreis. And I even said it. I said it in the preview last time that if Orlando City does not get a resort, Kreis is gone. And what do you know? He is gone 3 days later. And, you know, now that Orlando City is been rumoring that potentially Caleb Porter would replace Jason Kreis at that managerial job. And that, of course, would make sense because, you know, Caleb Porter is a manager that has MLS experience, and you know, he's used to be the manager of the Portland Timbers, even led that team to an MLS Cup back in 2015, and it would just make perfect sense that Caleb Porter would be going to Orlando City. Although, to be fair, I kind of hope that Caleb Porter doesn't get that job, because when we do fire Michael Starhay, that is the Quakes, hopefully the Quakes snatch Caleb Porter, because I think that is a manager that I think we definitely would want to have, since he has the MLS experience and he has the ways to try to turn a kind of mediocre and bad MLS team into a champion, and that's what he did with the Portland Timbers. So we're going to see if Orlando City is potentially going to hire him. I also heard that they did a in-person interview with Caleb Porter, so most likely they're going to hire him in the upcoming days. But unfortunately for Orlando City, yeah, your 7-game losing streak, which is the longest in MLS, is not going to end against Atlanta United. And despite the fact that Atlanta has looked in the past couple of weeks more human and kind of like brought down a little bit back down to the earth, I mean, they're still top in the Eastern Conference, and they're still top in the Supporters' Shield standings, but looking at how Atlanta has been playing in the last couple of weeks, it's definitely not as good as they were in the first couple of weeks of the season, when they were just playing free-flowing football at home and always play that grind-out kind of football on the road to get some result. So I should expect Atlanta to win this one very easily, and the streak will now be at 8 by the time Orlando City lose this one. But yeah, next up, speaking of Montreal, they play against Sporting KC. So Montreal got a back-to-back win. I'm not quite sure if I remember this is the first time they've done it. I know earlier in the season they had a couple of, I think they did had a back-to-back win earlier in the season when they first beat Toronto and then they beat Seattle the following week. And that was like the first 3 weeks of the season. But unfortunately, I don't think this winning streak will continue because they are playing against Sporting KC, and Sporting KC is a team that, although they haven't looked good lately, and that they're a team that is, they're a team that is on top of the Western Conference and probably one of the few teams in the Western Conference that can really take it to an Eastern Conference opponent. They have struggled a little bit recently. I mean, they had to rely on an incredible comeback where they were down 2-0 at home to the Dynamos, and then they got 3 goals in the second half to win that one. I don't think they're going to have to do the same thing against Montreal because, let's face it, Montreal is still bad. Okay? These 2 victories against Orlando City was because Orlando City was already in this brutal losing streak, and that the second game when they did beat Orlando City, which for once they actually looked very decent. I mean, that game between Orlando and Montreal looked like a team that is just, it looked like a team for a couple of years ago when they used to have Didier Drogba, and that their attack was flowing perfectly, and that for once they do not have to always rely on Ignacio Piatti as the guy to potentially score their goals. I mean, everybody just contribute in that victory, which is something that is very rare if you're as an Impact fan nowadays, especially on the road. But again, I don't think it's going to continue. I think they are going to lose this game against Sporting KC because Sporting KC is very good this season, and they're really trying to challenge Atlanta for that Supporter Shield standings and trying to run away with the Western Conference, which technically in some way they kind of are, but FC Dallas is starting to kind of like catch up to them, although FC Dallas did lose to the Red Bulls last week, so they kind of gained a little bit ground from that. But yeah, moving on into the second row of games, Columbus take on RSL. Now, if you want to know another team that is sort of having a little bit of a struggle, well, I wouldn't say struggle, but they kind of are not having the best form right now as it was the last couple of weeks. That, of course, would be Columbus, who is now winless in 5 matches. And although this stats kind of look very bad for Columbus, 4 of those 5 games that they did not get a win were all draws. And it wasn't until last week when they played against LAFC, which, they definitely did not play very well against LAFC. I was at that game, and let's just say that, Columbus did dominate the game, but it just felt like for the first 8 minutes, they just completely sleepwalked. Like, they just completely fell asleep. LAFC basically completely tore them apart, and that was pretty much the difference in that game, is that the damage was done early, and from the rest of the game, LAFC basically sat back. They had majority of possession, and they just could not break down that LAFC defense. And, in this game, when they play against RSL, I think it should be a little bit easier, plus the fact that they are playing at home in this game, and plus the fact that RSL have only won 1 out of 8 matches on the road. Their only victory this season on the road has been against the Seattle Sounders. Other than that, they have not won a single game on the road besides when they beat Seattle a couple of weeks ago. So this should be a win for Columbus, although knowing how things have gone, and for Columbus, this is just another reason why I said that this team is kind of having a little bit of a roller coaster season, because remember how Columbus, they started the season so hot and then they had this really bad stretch where they lost like 4 to 5 games in a row, and then they started having a very positive stretch where they went like 10 games without a defeat, and now all of a sudden 5-game winless, and now they're dropping all the way down to 4th in the Eastern Conference. It is just a definition of a roller coaster season, and I wouldn't say they've been inconsistent, because they did have that unbeaten streak and that they did have those kind of losing streak. They're not like what Chicago is, where they win, draw, loss, win, draw, loss, kind of like that pattern. It's more like they gone on a long winning streak, and then when they get on this long winning streak, when they do lose again, that's when you know that they are going to be falling off a cliff. And then once they're near kind of like rock bottom, they go get themselves back up, which is kind of like what a roller coaster ride kind of feels like. But yeah, next up, so New England play against DC United, and what I'm going to mainly focus about this game is that I am actually going to be talking about Wayne Rooney, and that he is officially signed for DC United, and that I'm not really going to mention much about this and just talk about this Wayne Rooney signing. And originally I was going to do a video about this because, you know, since Wayne Rooney is one of the bigger player to come to MLS, and usually when there's like a big European star, like what I did with the Zlatan signing back in March, where I did a video about that. I'm not going to do it this time for Wayne Rooney, and that's not to disrespect Wayne Rooney, or that Wayne Rooney is not a kind of big European star that comes to MLS and one of the biggest stars to come to this league. It's because I just don't have time to do it. Like, if you have seen me in these last couple of days, I've been non-stop trying to upload World Cup kind of videos on my channel, and it's taking a toll in terms of my body, and in terms of how I'm getting more stressful. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not enjoying this. I'm definitely enjoying doing these previews and review of the World Cup, but it's just getting to a point where when you have to do a video every single day, it gets a little bit stressful, and it definitely gets a little bit tiring, which is why I'm so happy that tomorrow, finally, we actually have a day without any World Cup games. And keep in mind, I've been watching games every single day, and it was until yesterday where I actually did not watch a single World Cup game, because I was just getting very stressed out, and the fact that I knew I had to do the preview, the review, and I have to do the Cali Clasico preview, and then I have to get ready to talk about this and stuff like that. So yeah, that's why I'm not going to just do a single video about Wayne Rooney coming to MLS, unlike what I did with Zlatan. But talking about this and just kind of quickly mentioning this, there's really not much to talk about this, because I did kind of mention, I think about 6 weeks ago, that Wayne Rooney potentially is coming to MLS, and that this was just kind of like a confirmation kind of thing. And I have checked the MLS website, and I did check to see what exactly is the amount of this. They said that this is a designated player signing, but they did not say the amount. And from what I know, when I first mentioned about Wayne Rooney coming to MLS, they said that his amount was $15 million. And I'm not quite sure if that is exact amount that he is coming now into MLS. But if anyone know, let me know in the comments below. But overall, in terms of this signing by DC United, I mean, this signing, it's pretty obvious that this signing is just to put people in the seats at Audi Field, and it is just a ways to promote kind of fans to come to the stadium. I mean, we knew that when Audi Field is about to open, we knew that DC United could potentially have trouble filling those seats because it's one, DC United does not have a very good attendance, and even though most of their games were played at the old RFK Stadium, they don't have a really strong attendance. And I'm not saying that DC United has like the worst fan base in MLS, and believe it or not, there's even worse fan base than DC United right now. But it's just that I just have a fear with how bad the team is so far this season that they'll probably fill Audi Field for the first couple of games, or maybe just the first game, and then after that it's just going to be empty seats around the stadium, and that they really need like a big flashy kind of move, a move that really get the attention to the fans, and Wayne Rooney is definitely going to be the big flashy move that DC United will use to get the fans' attention, because Wayne Rooney used to play for Manchester United, and you know that there are a lot of Manchester United fans in the US and especially in the DC area. And if you're a fan of a club like DC United and you're also a Manchester United fan, it's obvious that you're going to be excited and want to go to the stadium to see your hero play for your team. And that is pretty much the overall purpose for this move. This purpose of getting Wayne Rooney is not because DC United is going to automatically make the playoffs. In fact, I still think that there's just no chance for DC United to make the playoffs. They are just, even though they have played only 12 games and the least amount of game in MLS, they are still a long way behind the Eastern Conference. And the Eastern Conference is the tougher conference to try to get into the playoffs and try to sneak in the playoffs. And I just think just bringing Wayne Rooney is not going to just simply fix the problem. And DC United has more problems on this team besides the attacking issue. I mean, the midfield at times looked very kind of lackluster. The defense, we know that is not very good whatsoever. So this is not just going to automatically fix the problem for DC United. Although DC United will definitely climb up the table. They'll probably maybe finish around 9th or 8th now that they got Wayne Rooney, and he potentially could be scoring the goals for them and getting the wins for this team. But for me, with this move, I don't think it just instantly say that DC United is going to go to the playoffs. And I haven't even mentioned the fact that what if Wayne Rooney is going to be a flop in MLS? What if he pretty much is completely cooked, and that by the time he comes to this DC United team, he's going to be kind of like Andrea Pirlo or Frank Lampard or even Steven Gerrard, that is just completely cooked. Their legs are completely done, and that they just cannot make any more impacts anymore. So that's another thing that you also got to consider. But certainly this is a big signing for DC United, and certainly this is a very MLS 1.0 signing. I know there's a lot of haters talking about why in the world are we still making MLS 1.0 signing. Well, guess what? If you're a team that have a chance to bring in a big European star name like Wayne Rooney, you definitely would take it. I mean, if the Quakes bring in Wayne Rooney in, then I'll definitely be happy, because at least that way, it's definitely not going to help us in the long term, but at least it kind of brings the fans in, and it definitely helped the fact that you get to see one of your hero and one of the best player in the world on your team, and you can see them play week in and week out, which is why a lot of LA Galaxy fans are very happy right now, and why StubHub Center is still kind of like sold out every single game, because Zlatan is there. And when Zlatan is gone, I bet StubHub Center will be just like what happened last season, which is really empty. But yeah, enough talk about Wayne Rooney, and actually talk a little bit about this game. Well, the Revs, they are currently 5th in the Eastern Conference. They're hanging in there to trying to sneak into the playoffs this season. And, this is definitely a good opportunity for them to get a win. Obviously, DC United will not have Wayne Rooney until the summer transfer window begins, which is on July 10th. And until then, I think they're going to just continue to suffer and continue to have some losses there and there. And New England is going to be one of those teams that potentially is going to beat them and get a crucial victory at home. But yeah, next up, so Chicago take on NYCFC, and you know, I said that Chicago has this kind of inconsistent form, and I've been always talking about how they have this pattern of winning a game and then losing a game and then drawing a game and then winning again with this very inconsistent form. Well, it seemed like they kind of are started to stabilize that form, as they have now won or not won, but they're 4-game unbeaten now. And if I look at those 4 games that they play, 3 of them were a draw in that game. So it's definitely not an impressive 4-game winning streak when you only won 1 and you drew the other 3. But still, at least you're not losing a game. And I think that they are definitely going to be due to losing a game. Consider how the pattern of them winning, losing, drawing, and the thing that I keep mentioning about weeks in and weeks out for the Chicago Fire. Well, this is going to be the case when they play against NYCFC. I mean, this NYCFC team is a team that got a come-from-behind win against Toronto, and certainly a team that is chasing down Atlanta and trying to get that top spot. And although this NYCFC team still don't have their manager yet, this team is definitely not going to just completely fade away, and not going to be like Orlando City where there's no manager, we're just going to keep losing and stuff like that. Nope, this NYCFC team is going to continue winning, and I expect them to get a victory against the Fire, because the Fire are really due for a loss. I mean, I just have a sense every week I just had a feeling that the Fire are eventually going to lose again. Consider how inconsistent they are, and this is probably the game that they will lose. But yeah, next up, so LAFC. So remember how a couple of weeks ago I talked about LAFC and how they are now in this stretch where they are going to be missing a lot of their key guys like Vela, Orania, and also Gabbard, and also Simon, although Simon went back to LAFC after getting cut by the Belgian national team at the very last minute, and that must be kind of heartbreaking for him. Although, to be fair, right after that LAFC versus Columbus game, Laurent Simon actually came over where I was actually sitting, and he was actually taking selfies with the fans, and he actually looked very happy. So I'm guessing that with the way that, you know, he got cut by the Belgian national team, I thought he would be kind of disappointed, but instead I think maybe he's kind of got over with that. And it's always great to see players go to the fans and taking selfies and, you know, signing autographs. Unfortunately, I did not take a selfie with Laurent Simon. I was tempted to do it, but I kind of didn't want to do it at the last minute. But he was basically just taking selfies to everybody. I probably maybe should have just asked him to sign my Save the Crew scarf and asked him if he is part of the Save the Crew campaign. But either way, going back to talk about this game, you know, like I said, LAFC, they were missing a lot of guys heading into this World Cup, and I said that if they can just stay above the red line, then this team is going to be fine, and that this team is definitely going to be making the playoffs. Well, what do you know? They even did one better too. Not only they are staying above the red line, they are right around the same spot they were when they started losing all those guys to the World Cup, and that they did had a couple of injury that bothered them. And that 2-0 win against Columbus, I'll tell you what, that is a very impressive win for LAFC. Like, that was a win that I definitely did not expect it, because I thought Columbus, considering how coming into that game and how they were in a pretty good form, I didn't think that they were going to they were going to get something out of, consider how many guys that they've been missing. But what do you know? They beat Columbus, and now they're in third place, and now they're getting, since they're about to get a bunch of the key guys back, guys like Orania and also Vela back in the squad, this team is definitely going to go somewhere. Like, this LAFC team could definitely beat Atlanta to the I wouldn't say the kind of expansion kind of race in terms of the most win in a regular season, but right now LAFC is on track to potentially have the best regular season since 1997 when the Chicago Fire won the MLS Cup. But the thing about that is that Chicago was with other expansion teams, so I don't think we should kind of count them as actually having a good expansion season when other team around them were also expansion team. And that was back when MLS was only in their second year of existing, and there wasn't really a lot of media attention or a lot of talk about the league. The way that LAFC is, what they're doing this season, and the way how the MLS is become more competitive than ever before, this is absolutely impressive of what LAFC is doing. I mean, you could argue that this is even more impressive than what Atlanta is doing last year. So, certainly props to LAFC for having an incredible opening season in their history, and I expect them to potentially get a win again in this game against the Union. The Union did get a win against the Whitecaps. They did beat them 4-0, but let's face it, they are playing against an LAFC team that certainly have a lot of confidence, and that the Union are not very good on the road this season. So yeah, I expect LAFC to get a win out of that, which now brings us to the game that I already kind of did a full review, but I'm still going to be talking about it. And that, of course, is the Quakes versus the Galaxy. It is the Cali Clasico. And, this Cali Clasico, I think, in many ways, is pretty much like the MLS Cup final for us. I mean, so far with the way how this season has gone and how we're now the worst team in the Western Conference, and I think we're also the worst team in the league if you also count the points per game total. And we're playing at Stamford Stadium. We're playing in front of 50,000 people, which is the largest crowd we're going to get at a Quakes game. And we're also playing our most hated rival. And we're going to be facing against Zlatan in this game. So this is pretty much our version of the MLS Cup final. And you would definitely know that I will be celebrating like crazy when we score a goal. And I'm going to celebrate like we won the MLS Cup, because that is what it means to me and to all those Quakes fans, and definitely for this team to beat LA. I mean, I said it in the preview. I talk about how it will be so sweet, and it will be just absolutely to my biggest pleasure if we can beat LA and hand Zlatan a big fat L. I mean, in fact, I might as well just do the Fortnite celebration like this when we finally get that win, just to, intimidate those Galaxy fans even further. But, overall talking about this match, the Quakes certainly does have a good record at Stamford Stadium when they play against the Galaxy. Since they started playing it back in 2013, if I remember, or 2012 actually. The Quakes have actually won 4 of the last 6 Cali Clasico against LA, and the only time that we actually lost to the Galaxy was back in 2015 when we lost to them 1-0 at Stamford Stadium. So certainly the past history is definitely going to be in favor for us. But, we are playing against the Galaxy, and, knowing how this team has been this season and how they've been failing to turn up game after game, I'm a little bit nervous that we might not get anything out of this game and that this might be another loss for us. But something just tells me that, if you're a Quakes player and if you're the players down there, you're playing in the biggest game of the season and that you're playing your most hated rival and you are playing at Stamford Stadium, which is not the most iconic stadium in the world, but you're playing in front of 50,000 people. I mean, unless you always attend Atlanta United game week in and week out, tell me who exactly usually always put 50,000 people in an MLS game in any of the MLS game. Okay, maybe Seattle might be one of them because they also have a big stadium. But my point is, this is a big game for us, and that it will be really disappointed if we lose this one. I mean, of all the things that have gone wrong for us this season and all the bad kind of memories and just not having any nice thing whatsoever, we are so due to have a game where we can at least remember at the end of the season. I mean, even if we don't make the playoffs this year and we might just lose the rest of the game, if we win this one, at least I can say that we beat Zlatan and we beat the Galaxy once again at Stamford. So, hoping that the Quakes will actually show up for once, and if you're not going to show up for the rest of the season, then you might as well just show up for this game, because this is just so important for all us Quakes fans that we want to win this one. But yeah, talking about the last two games, so Toronto, of course, play against the Red Bulls. Believe it or not, Toronto is actually not far below from the red line. They're only 5 points away from actually making the playoffs, which is not a lot of points to make up for. So, despite the fact that it looked like Toronto hasn't made any progress whatsoever, and I think I kind of regret what I have been saying the last couple of weeks of how I'm kind of concerned that Toronto potentially are not going to be making the playoffs, and that, this miserable run that they are in is just going to continue through the rest of the season. Maybe not. Maybe there is kind of hope for Toronto. They're only 5 points out, and that if they can just get themselves together, if they can just do exactly what they did last season and just find some magic that they had last season and also the previous season, then I think Toronto could potentially sneak into the playoffs. Now, when they get to the playoffs, that is going to be a big question in terms of how are they going to do, and maybe when that happens, we'll of course talk a little bit more about it. But right now, I think for any TFC fans, they just want this team to just get into the playoffs. I mean, before we said that TFC was going to have this very rough stretch and then they're going to eventually pick it up. Well, unfortunately, that has not happened whatsoever. So I think right now, every TFC fan just want this team to pick up some points and just get themselves in as the 6th or 5th seed. And yes, they potentially might face Atlanta or NYCFC on the road, which is going to be definitely tough. But still, they definitely want to make the playoffs, and they definitely want to trying to not be one of those teams that made it to the MLS Cup final, won the whole thing, and then the very next year they completely laid an egg and did not get into the playoffs. But it's not going to be easy because they're playing against the Red Bulls, and the Red Bulls, like NYCFC, is right on the doorstep of Atlanta. They're only 5 points out of Atlanta United, but I think they have 2 extra games in hand over Atlanta. So if they won those 2 games in hand, they would be top of the Eastern Conference, and I think they currently have the best points per game ratio. So technically, they're actually first place right now in the Eastern Conference if you count the game in hand. And TFC this season at home has definitely been nothing of a fortress like it has been the last 2 seasons whenever they're at home. But still, they got a home field advantage for this big game against the Red Bulls, and maybe they can surprise the Red Bulls and maybe get a win against them. And if they do get a win against them, this will be a massive victory for TFC, and it should do a lot of confidence for this team to potentially keep making up ground, keep getting closer and closer to the red line, which, like I said, they're only 5 points out of that. But, you know, the Red Bulls are definitely not going to make it easy for them. And you know, if you want to put a bet on this, you would say that the Red Bulls potentially are going to get a victory out of this. But I might think that this could potentially be a draw. And, you know, a draw for TFC might not be the worst thing because the Red Bulls are having a very good season. But definitely if they can get a win, it will really help their confidence a lot. But now talk about the last game of the week, and usually there's a typical cliche that says we save the best for last. Well, unfortunately, it does not apply for this game. It's more like we save the worst for last in this case because, yeah, the Whitecaps against Colorado, not a marquee kind of, not the best way to end your week on a game like that. I mean, you know, there is obviously no disrespect to the Whitecaps or Colorado, but you know, the Rapids, you know, they recently just ended their endless kind of losing streak and also their endless winless streak that they have after finally getting a victory, and it was a 96-minute winner. I mean, that game between the Rapids and Minnesota, that was really probably the first time that you actually hear Rapids fan go absolutely nuts and pretend that they just won the MLS Cup because of how relief that is that they finally got a win. And you better believe that if the Quakes can get another last minute winner like they did last year, you would believe that I will go completely nuts and I will just celebrate like I won the MLS Cup because, you know, when you have a long losing streak and when you have a long winless streak, when you finally get a win, when you finally witness a win in person, it just felt so much, not only so much relief, but just joy that you finally see the team win after just such a bad run. And that was the case for Colorado as Dick's Sporting Goods Park basically just exploded in joy after the Rapids got that 96-minute winner. But then they need to, of course, try to settle down in terms of that celebration because they're now going on the road against the Whitecaps. And yeah, the Whitecaps had an embarrassing display against the Union. And despite the fact that this team did have a 6-game win, unbeaten run, you know, that loss is going to really anger Whitecaps fan. And, you know, even though the Whitecaps are currently in 6th place and just above the red line, technically their points per game ratio tells them that they are below the red line. And, you know, Carl Robinson, I don't know how in the world is he still the manager with this team, but you would think that if the Whitecaps does miss the playoffs, then Robinson probably is going to be sacked by this Whitecaps. I mean, if you look at the manager that potentially could get sacked this season, beside Michael Starhaig, who is in the second on the list, the third on the list of the potential manager to get sacked could be Carl Robinson, because there is a lot of Whitecaps fan that actually hates him and that they want him to go out and that they are begging the ownership to sack Robinson. But yeah, that is pretty much it for the preview of this week action. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of all of these 11 games, and make sure you leave a prediction below of all 11 of these games in the comments below. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's so good to be back talking MLS preview and review after missing for 3 weeks. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.